Hey guys, this is James McCool. Welcome to this post, this explanation of what the AADP calculator is, and a quick little run through of the features that it has. If you've read through the post, then you know that the AADP calculator stands for Adjusted Average Draft Position Calculator. It is used for season-long purposes to assess value of players against the rest of the player pool. So when you are thinking, well, how much should I really be paying for somebody like Anthony Rendon, or somebody like Cody Bellinger, or Bryce Harper? What you're really doing is you're saying how valuable should this player really be to me? And I think that a lot of people, when you think about what average draft position means, um, one, it is certainly the value of that player to the rest of the field, but it doesn't really assess how valuable a player is, right? I mean, in the same way that in daily fantasy sports, we think about how valuable a player is to the field in terms of their ownership. Like, say, somebody's going to be 50% owned in some individual contest. You can think the same way about about average draft position for season long stuff. If Mike Trout is going number one overall, he is viewed as very, very valuable to the rest of the drafting community, right? If somebody is drafted 500th overall, they're not viewed as very valuable to the rest of the community. But that is really just a microcosm of the biases that the rest of the industry has. So I wanted to build a tool that doesn't think about those biases, that doesn't know who Anthony Rendon is, it doesn't know who Cody Bellinger is. It didn't watch the games last year. It goes off of the steamer projections that are curated by the wonderful folks over at Rasball. I think they do a really, really good job. Rudy Gamble is one of the best in terms of curating and making realistic projections. So I decided to use their projection set over there. So it goes off of projections. It doesn't have any biases built in about who these players are, which allows it to make calculations based on what they are projected to be. So that's the majority of what this is. I just wanted to build something that made it easier for everybody to really assess the true value of players. So I posted a screenshot of what Anthony Rendon is valued as and who his comparisons are from the calculator itself, but I didn't really show like the whole thing. So this is like the main comp sheet, and you can see there's a lot going on here. But what I did was I put in Anthony Rendon, right? And I can do this any player. Like let's do Cody Bellinger, for instance. So you put in a player, and then you go into this, which is threshold. And you can type in whatever you want for this. This is going to be, and I have some like little notes in here, but the threshold is how close you want each stat to be to each other. So if you put it at 10%, which 10% and 80% for proximity are the baselines, those are what I use and what I suggest that you use. But if you are measuring within 10%, what it's going to do is it's going to say, all right, find everybody who has an average within 10% of Cody Bellinger's, and within 10% of his on-base percentage, within 10% of his slugging percentage. So in the little note here, it says if a player has a 333 average, a 10% threshold would accept players between a 300 and a 366 average as an acceptable match. So you have to be able to give it some thresholds like that, right? You need to be able to have those comparisons make sense. The next part of it is proximity. And proximity is how many stats you want it to match in order for it to be an acceptable match for your player. So 80% as the baseline makes the most sense to me because that means that it's only going to be missing one of these stats. It might be like down here for these 89% comp grades. This means that all but one of these stats matches what Anthony Rendon had. So Charlie Blackmon, the one miss for him is going to be total bases, it looks like, or it might be stolen bases. Maybe it's a little bit more, less RBI, something like that. It's going to have one of these stats is going to be not quite as close against Anthony Rendon, but that's what this 89% is. It'll accept anybody who fits over 80% of a comparison. So 10%, 80%, I think, from the tests that I've done, has shown the best results. So obviously for Anthony Rendon, these are the matches. If we go with Cody Bellinger, and we want to find out what his average draft position, adjusted average draft position, and his draft value is, and I'll talk about those here in a second. But if we wanted to go with Cody Bellinger, we would say Cody Bellinger, threshold of whatever you want it to be. It can be 10%, it can be 15%, it can be 7%, whatever. And then proximity of 80%. And then we'll go over here, and if we're looking at hitters, then you'll want to compare hitters. If you're looking at pitchers, you want to do pitchers. So you go with compare hitters, and as you can see, he does have a match. It is Bryce Harper. And these two are very, very close to each other. The one thing that is going to be off is this total bases, but home runs really close, runs really close, stolen bases really close. You can see the RBI, that's where that total bases and RBI difference is going to be. OPS close, slugging percentage close, on base percentage close. The average just like at the very bottom of Cody Bellinger's. So because of that, Cody Bellinger has an average draft position of 4.3, but because Bryce Harper is right here at 25.7, and a lot of these things could fluctuate, right? I mean, these are not so far away from each other that you wouldn't expect Bryce Harper to be able to have a 275 average and finish with the same total bases as Cody Bellinger. These are close projections. Because of that, why would you be taking Cody Bellinger at 4 overall when you could be taking Bryce Harper at 25 overall and have a good shot at, you know, his outcomes that we were predicting? The draft value, it shows how valuable a player really is based at their ADP. So Cody Bellinger is the least valuable player in the entire draft right now, according to the average adjusted average draft position calculator, because he's being drafted so high. You are paying such a high draft capital for him, that first round pick, when you could be getting him at the second round, like late second round or early third round, depending on what kind of draft capital you're in. So the draft value is actually based off of a formula that Alex Chamberlain over at Fangraphs uses. He uses a natural log progression so that like the top of the draft is more important than the bottom of the draft. So I'll go over that when we get into the full out draft sheet, but just know that way negative is very bad, way positive is very good. So I mean, that's just a single comparison for a hitter. Like, let's take a look at a pitcher. Off the top of my head, because I'm always talking about Chris Archer, we'll go with Chris Archer. We'll go with 10%, and we'll go with the 80%, and then we'll just go compare pitchers. As you can see, he's being drafted at 289. His adjusted draft position is 134. He's a really, really good value. People are just not wanting to buy him because of his name and what's associated with the biases there, but his projections are not all that bad. A 4.18 ERA, 178 strikeouts, 55 walks, that's not bad at all. When you're looking at him in the scope of like what the other main comparisons are going to be, he's right there with Brandon Woodruff. Brandon Woodruff is going 93rd overall, but he has, you know, you look across this board and they're the same pitcher by projection. So why would you be paying for Brandon Woodruff at 93 when you could have Chris Archer at 289? And more importantly, why would you feel that you need to wait that late to get Chris Archer? This basically says that anytime after the 137th ADP, like after the 137th play off the board, Chris Archer is a fine pick. Like, you have a lot of value left. If you can get him at like 210, 220, then you're sitting really, really pretty, according to this calculation. Really quick, I wanted to also show what adjusting the threshold or proximity is going to do for you. So say that you wanted to see more comparisons for Chris Archer. Maybe you wanted to widen the net a little bit. You could put this to 20% and then compare pitchers, and we're going to get a whole lot of like more matches, because it's now looking for a 20% match between all of his stats. You know, you would be looking for the value, like the ceiling value of what Chris Archer could possibly bring. He projects a lot like somebody like Jack Flaherty and Luis Castillo, whereas he can get a lot of strikeouts and not have a whole lot of walks. So that's another way to like kind of get a little bit different results. You can also go down here to just 5% and compare pitchers, and then you only get 3, right? You only get Chris Archer, Brendan Woodruff, and Cole Hamels. Um, Obviously, Cole Hamels is less strikeouts, but it's still a really, really good match. So obviously, Chris Archer, good value. So we'll put this back to 10. The other things on here, so we have this pitcher AADP run, hitter AADP run, and full AADP run. And what that's going to do is it's going to look at the entire set of projections that you have from the hitters and the starting pitchers and the current ADP, and all of this stuff is going to come on the sheet. And it is going to say, all right, you can type in whatever number you want here. Say that we only wanted to do the top 10 in AADP for hitters, right? We just wanted to look at the top 10 hitters in AADP and how they compare against each other. So you'd put in 10 here, and then you'd hit this hitter AADP run. And then I optimized the hell out of this thing, so it runs really, really fast now. That one only took 3 seconds. But this is the top 10 hitters in AADP right now and where they really belong. So Ronald Acuna, there's nobody that's going to compare like him. He should go number 1 overall. Mike Trout going 2nd overall. Nobody's going to compare like him. He should be 2nd overall. And I think that these two are pretty indisposable, right? Francisco Lindor should be going a little bit earlier. Mookie Betts should be going a little bit later. Mookie Betts going at 4.7 should be going 6.84. Christian Yelich going at 3 should be going at 8.38. The AADP calculator thinks that he's not a very good value at 3. Comparisons make more sense for him to be a little bit later. Trevor Story, about right where he should be. Cody Bellinger, obviously way later. Should be going 25th overall, not 4th. Juan Soto, way later. Should be going 28th overall instead of 11th. Alex Bregman, 31st instead of 7th. Nolan Arenado, 44th instead of 11th. So as you can see, these are indispensable because they don't have any comparisons. You can go back into this sheet and you can go and say, all right, well, it says that there's no comparisons for Mike Trout. Let's really see that. There's nothing. There's nobody that's going to project like Mike Trout does. He's the best player in baseball. You're not going to find any projections that are like him. Ronald Acuna Jr., you're not going to find any matches for him because his steal total is so massive compared to that home run total. So both of those two absolutely deserve to go at their ADPs. Say that you wanted to see the top 20 pitchers, right? You put in 20 there and you click pitcher AADP run. And then it's going to do the same thing that it did with hitters. It's going to compare every single pitcher against every single pitcher in the database. The top 20 against every single pitcher in the database takes 8 seconds. And then you can see here, Luis Severino, really, really bad value. He's 70 spots overdrafted right now. Max Scherzer, good value. He's going 5 spots too late. He should be right there with DeGrom and Verlander. There's really no question between these three. They're basically within 1 spot. They're all really, really good picks together. Garrett Cole should be going a little bit later. According to Steamer, we should be expecting some regression for Garrett Cole, and there's going to be some reason not to take him at number 6 overall. You should probably take DeGrom, Verlander, and Scherzer before him. Walker Buehler looks like a really bad value too. So that's how you do hitters and pitchers in this. Say that you wanted to do both hitters and pitchers. Well, that's what this full AADP run is going to give you. And it'll do the same thing that we just saw with this, but it's going to be with both hitters and pitchers. So the last thing worth mentioning, and we'll run the top 25 with a full AADP run, just so that I can talk about what the value is showing. The last thing is with the value category in your draft sheet, and that's what this tab is down here. This adjusted ADP tab is going to be what your draft sheet is. The value associated with each player isn't necessarily just how many picks they're being overdrafted. Because the picks being overdrafted, the difference of 20 picks for Cody Bellinger is much different than the difference for 20 picks of like Xander Bogaerts, right? I mean, Xander is going 33rd right now. He should be going 59th, but his value is much less negative than Cody Bellinger's. That's because when you look at the top of the leaderboard, right? If you look at ADP, this is where your teams are going to be made or broken. Like picking wrong in the first round can doom your entire season. You lose so much floor, you lose so much upside. So the top rounds are going to be a lot more valuable than the bottom rounds. That's why Cody Bellinger is such a seriously negative value. But somebody like Luis Severino being drafted 63rd, he's got a massive differential, right? I mean, he's being drafted 70 spots over where he deserves to be, but it's only a negative 6.6 value because he's already being drafted so late that he's not really killing you if you take him. So what you should be focusing on if you really want to find who to avoid, sort this tab by value and try to find the worst values, right? Cody Bellinger, Alex Bregman, Nolan Arenado, Anthony Rendon, Christian Yelich. Those are really, really bad values at their current ADP. And if you sort by largest, you can see who the best picks at their ADP right now are. Jose Ramirez, being drafted 20th, deserves to be drafted in the top 10. That's a really good value. Trevor Bauer, Yu Darvish, both being drafted in the mid-70s, should be drafted in the mid-30s. Really, really good values there. So that's how you're going to be using the draft sheet. That's how you're going to be using value. Again, this is just to help you draft smarter. It's to tell you who is a bad pick, who's a good pick, where should these guys really be valued based on their projections. The last thing worth talking about here is this comparison tool. So this is comparisons for pitchers. You can put in any pitcher here and compare them against another pitcher, right? So Jacob deGrom, obviously a better pick than Brandon Woodruff, but what about against Justin Verlander, right? Like, these two are very close to each other, but who has the edge? Like, Verlander is projected for more strikeouts, less walks, and a better whip. But Jacob deGrom, better ERA, less home runs, and a better quality start percentage, and also less runs allowed. So being able to do that with any of these hitters or pitchers, this is just a really nice way to kind of get like a very straightforward idea of who is better if you're having a 1v1 decision in a draft. And the last thing is to say that all of this stuff can be updated at the click of a button. So these are built into a connection with the Razzball Steamer projections, both hitter and pitcher. The ADP is built into a connection with the I don't remember what site that is, but I can get it for you if you want it. And all you do to get that all refreshed is go up here to this data tab and then click refresh all. And what that's going to do is it's going to refresh the projections, it's going to refresh the pitcher projections, it's going to refresh the ADP, and that way you're always working with the most up-to-date set of projections and average draft position metrics at the click of a button. And that's a big thing because last year I had to make a new sheet every time that somebody wanted an updated one, and this year you can do it all yourself. So this has been a breakdown of what this tool brings to you. It is a way to draft smarter. I'm pricing it, the best that I can, so that I can make it accessible to everybody. And if you have interest in it, then please do send an email to the link at the bottom of this post. Thanks a lot, guys.